And this Trump coin and the subsequent Millennia coin actually did that, surprisingly. So about 50% of the token holders had never bought Solana token before this event. So that is an enormous amount of people. Net, I think this is positive for me in terms of onboarding, in terms of getting folks interested in crypto more broadly, and for the...
What do you make of the comments by some, again, skeptical people rather, who were saying, okay, this is just sort of a start of the anything goes capitalism?
Crypto is the purest form of capitalism. Anyone could own it. Anyone could launch a token and create wealth. Anyone could not have their individual assets in the hands of intermediaries and third parties. While we might not like this expression of pure capitalism, this is what...
Tom Dunleavy is a leading investment professional with deep expertise in venture capital, financial strategy, and Web3.
Currently a partner at MV Capital, he manages a approximately $50 million top quartile venture fund that has backed over 350 projects since 2019. With a background in institutional investment and research at Messari, Tom is also an active angel investor and advisor in the crypto space.
June Safer put up a post the other day that had, 20 plus ETFs from everything from Polkadot to Dogecoin to Solana to whatever, to a range of ETFs. So I think we're going to see a lot of this stuff. Actually, as an industry, we should hope that a lot of these things are not approved, because if they are approved, that just sucks more capital out from assets, quote unquote, legitimate assets that we want to invest in. Like, do we need an H-bar ETF? I don't think so.
Who's going to decide which of these assets, after all, is going to be valid and worthy of an ETF? Like, where do you kind of stop?
The tricky part is the genie's out of the bottle for this stuff. I think we're going to see a lot more hated rallies. XRP maybe at the front of that.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Less Noise, More Signal. Today, I'm really excited for a really exciting discussion that I'm going to have with Tom. Hey, Tom, cool to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's been a while, like sort of in terms of actually getting you on the show. We were going back and forth and just trying to make it happen. And obviously, we want to talk about the current market environment and what's happening. And I mean, there's been a lot of things that just recently happened, but then there's also a lot of speculation in terms of these executive orders and stuff, So we were kind of like on the fence about, okay, should we go online already? There hasn't been any news lately, and then at some point we're just, okay, let's make this happen. So really nice, that we can do this. And maybe before we start talking about what's going on with Trumpcoin and Bitcoin and everything else, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. So currently lead the investment arm for MV Global. MV Global has been investing since 2019 in digital assets. Along with launching our own projects, we've invested in 350 plus pre-seed and seed stage startups. On the investment side of the business, we manage a VC fund for LPs since 21, and also a hedge fund we launched last year. So very deeply crypto native. My background is managing portfolios in traditional finance for 10 years, senior analyst at Messari as well, and very focused on the research side before we make any allocation.
Nice, cool, interesting. And you're based in the States, right?
I am in Boston, so it is a balmy, I think 2 degrees Fahrenheit, around -14 or -18 Celsius, if I have it right, something like that. So before we hopped on, I'm inside, but I had a winter hat on.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I was gonna wear a hat as well, but it's more of a summer hat because I'm currently in Cape Town, so I got a more better weather, so to say, a few more degrees on my side. But hopefully it's still gonna get hot somewhat, our discussion. I mean, because things currently have been sort of hot, in the crypto and Bitcoin sphere or scene, So I want to talk shop here, and especially I want to talk about the Trump initiative first, Trump's crypto initiatives. I mean, Trump has been hyped in the crypto and Bitcoin space for quite some time for being rather positive. He has called himself the crypto president and made a lot of promises during his campaign, when he was really election campaign. And now the question is, okay, what is he going to follow through with? And I think one thing that we saw, I think it was a couple of days before his inauguration, is when he launched his Memecoin, as one thing, like one part of his overall initiative that he has here. And some people, or I guess a lot of people, were rather skeptical, calling it a grift, and really like sort of, okay, what's he doing here? Who's actually advising him and stuff? And yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on the whole situation, and then maybe also, is it more of a net positive for crypto and Bitcoin after all, or is it going to turn out badly in the end?
Yeah, so lots to unpack there. Why don't we start with what Trump has done so far? So he, day one was always going to be a challenging day. He has a lot of balls, parties, dinners to attend, and signing executive orders literally in between those. His primary focus initially has been immigration and diversity and inclusion efforts, along with the tariff efforts, which play a key role in the dollar strength, along with treasury yields, all which have a key impact on risk assets. So those have been his real focus and a lot of his talking points. You could see he started to move on digital assets as well and things that impact digital assets. So looking across the legislative agencies in the US, we've had a new acting SEC chair, Mark Ueda, who's been very favorable in terms of his speech in crypto, as well as crypto mom Hester Pierce being appointed to a subcommittee, which should help govern digital assets in a more favorable light. FDIC, which is the Operation Choke Point 2.0 architect, has been appointed Travis Hill, who has been openly critical of the FDIC's stance on Operation Choke Point 2.0 and crypto more broadly. So he should have more favorable, direction, hopefully. CFTC, which has been the counterparty to the SEC. Trump has appointed Caroline Pham, who she spent a considerable time directing digital asset legislation while she's been at the CFTC as a commissioner. So very favorable towards crypto again. So all of the pieces are in place behind the scenes to start having more favorable crypto legislation. So what I think crypto Twitter and others are reacting to is that we didn't get a Bitcoin strategic reserve on day one. I think it's coming. I think it's going to take some time. Senator Lummis, right before we recorded, actually just tweeted out it, big things are coming, emoji. We'll see if that actually comes to anything. So I think a lot of the groundwork is already being laid, and we've seen this with the Ross Ulbricht sort of frame as well, which we can get into later. But, he's starting to keep his promises. It's just going to take time. Government doesn't move at the speed of 24/7 crypto markets, unfortunately, for all of us. Now, in terms of Trump and this meme coin, I think there are two ways to look at it. You can say this is a grift, this is extremely negative, which I think certainly in part it is optically very poor for those who are already very skeptical of crypto. But if you can just look at the actual response from most major news outlets, it wasn't like, oh, this is a scam, whatever. It was just sort of reporting that, hey, Trump launched this thing. And honestly, no one's very surprised. So I think given who's launched it, it's sort of okay, we should have probably saw this coming. But in terms of actually what we need here in the space, it's onboarding net new users, net new capital, and getting more folks in the industry actually using the chain. And this Trump coin and the subsequent Melania coin actually did that, surprisingly. So about 50% of the token holders had never bought a Solana token before this event. So that is an enormous amount of people. 47% of those created a wallet the same day. And over 80% of those hold less than $1,000 worth of Solana assets in general. So this was a massive distribution onboarding event. Now, is this the onboarding event we wanted for everyone? Probably not. But as many folks who got into crypto, like myself did, you get on board and you try out some crazy stuff, and then you start using the chain and you're like, wow, this is interesting, cool. I see the advantages over banking, et cetera, et cetera. But the real nexus of a lot of folks' interest is, hey, I can make some money on this. So we've seen a lot of people do that. And what almost would have been worse is if they got on chain and immediately this thing dumped to zero. And of course, there are those who lost. But as of the time we're recording right now, Trump coin is still at, around $37 a token, over 10 billion FTV, maybe even higher. So still a lot of, wealth that folks put in, probably around the same level they put in at. So, um, net, I think this is positive for me in terms of onboarding, in terms of getting folks interested in crypto more broadly, and for the overall point of view that, hey, our president is launching meme coins. He's interested in the space, and he's actively not impeding progress, based on all the legislative stuff he's done.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. Great thoughts. Especially the fact around this point that it was like a lot of new people who actually entered this coin. That's certainly something I haven't had on my horizon. And yeah, as you say, I mean, this is sort of onboarding new people for sure. I mean, in the end, I was just really wondering how this is going to turn out. Because obviously the question is always, I don't know. Yeah, is it going to be really that positive in the sense that yeah, these people are going to stick around? But maybe if you're sort of a Bitcoiner, you might also believe, okay, they might be onboarded first through these crypto rails, but then later, yeah, they're going to stay around as more Bitcoiners. Who knows? That's yet to be seen. But the question I'm really having here is on the long term effects as well. What do you think? What sort of long term effects for the space in general, and just for tokens and crypto, could this spawn as well? Like maybe, I guess a lot of people are looking at this, as you said, media is looking at this, like maybe also other politicians, all their celebrities are looking at this, and we've seen one or two like celebrity coins already coming online. But what do you think could be the long-term consequences? Could it be that at some point, yeah, if this really turns out well, so to say, from an overall objective perspective, that this could be sort of a vindication for these type of coins as well? Or what are your thoughts there?
I don't know. So these type of coins have been launched for quite some time. I mean, you've had a ton of celebrities who have launched coins over the past year or two and have not received this attention level. So I don't know if it's really a sea change, besides the fact that the most popular man on earth launched this thing, and people, he's been a net wealth creator, especially with initiatives he has marketing around. So I think folks rightfully said, okay, the thing is probably going to go up for some period of time. I don't know if it's more people are going to launch these things, other heads of states, maybe, potentially. But what I do think it unlocks is all institutions and other, companies and others who have thought about the capital stack in terms of debt and equity and flavors of those, whether it be preferred securities or convertible notes or whatever, now have to think about token issuance as a way to generate a new level of wealth. And that level of wealth can mean, faster R&D initiatives, more money to pay staff, or even just, sort of a token to coalesce around for a community, whatever that means. And that means, people are talking about speculation, Harvard could launch a coin, and, all these other places that never could launch a token before because there's no cash flows or anything. You could start thinking about, how does this fit into our strategy? Now, I think those conversations and thought processes will be interesting, and what institutions actually pursue these initiatives. But I think that's more of the line of inquiry that I think is interesting going forward, is who else is going to launch a token up above these, the random, rapper or speculator or whatever. I care more about the big institutions and others who are now considering crypto as part of their capital stack, because they see this wealth creation event in a way that this can sort of inform their fundraising or operational strategy.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah. What do you make of the comments by some, again, skeptical people rather, who were saying, okay, this is just sort of a start of the anything goes capitalism, like Trump, now he's kicking this off, and he's probably already in the gray zone with this, and I think it's not super clear. Some people are arguing it's totally legal what he does here. Others are saying, well, it might not even be that. And then others are pointing to the fact it might just be morally a little dubious, But apart from this, I'm like wondering, yeah, what do you make of these comments? People saying this is really the start of a more anything goes capitalism thing, and then also further down the road, like as you said, like all other like a lot of entities will have to look at these tokens and stuff, but this could just turn out to be, like a token, everything, everyone's going to launch their own token, and we don't know, we were going to drown in a sea of tokens that we don't really know what they are, so to say. What is your comment?
I would ask those folks to take a look deeply in the mirror on what they want out of crypto. Crypto is the purest form of capitalism. Anyone could own it. Anyone could launch a token and create wealth. Anyone could not have their individual assets in the hands of intermediaries and third parties. And while we might not like this expression of pure capitalism, this is what part of what crypto has as its initial genesis, and its underlying principles is that anyone could create capital, that anyone could own these things. Now you may not like it, but that is the genesis and ethos of the space since the inception. What I think, and this is how things always go, you kind of swing all the way in one direction and back and forth, and you kind of find like a happy medium. So I think this will hopefully fast track a lot of the things that, Hester Pierce and others have talked about, safe harbor launches and, launches through these new and innovative platforms that really look at, social, like who's actually buying the token, social credit scores of these things like Legion and Echo and others, rather than like, and there's a bit more like that is part of the investment process if you're buying one of these things, rather than like, hey, I'm just going to buy, whatever Taylor Swift token because she's launching it. You'll look at who else is buying it, what they're doing, etc. But I think there's also an honesty in the fact that some of these things are just pure speculative vehicles and tokens for attention. We've seen this with the Memecoin craze, and we saw it last time with the NFT craze. For a long time, there was the same argument. There was, hey, what are these Bored Apes really good for? Hey, what are CryptoPunks really good for? And it's like, let's put all these roadmaps around these things. Let's try to, provide some level of utility. And at the end of the day, the revealed preference from the market is like the utility and stuff really didn't matter. People just cared about the actual attention and the clout they got from owning these individual NFTs. And it's sort of the same thing so far with Trump. It's like, cool, I bought Trumpcoin at $4 and now it's 40. Like, would it be the same thing with Taylor Swift coin, or would it be the same thing with whatever celebrity coin? Like, probably. And I think, this just opens folks' eyes more to what has been going on anyway. It's like, these things have a spectrum between being completely attention economy to some level of utility to like maybe some cash flow generating asset. But like, you have to understand the tension between those things, and crypto enables all of them. So you as an individual investor have to be smart enough to figure out like where you're playing on that spectrum.
No, that's certainly a great point, because I think, as you said, on the point of attention or this attention aspect, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, that this is really sort of bringing these meme coins and sort of attention coins to the forefront, and a lot more people will be confronted with them, and then maybe the discussion on how to actually value them and what they're for, and why should you buy it as an investor, or what to expect if you buy it. That's certainly a discussion that this could sort of accelerate, which I think would then be a net positive again, that people sort of get familiarized with what they're actually doing here, and also some broader folks who might not be that deep into the weeds of crypto, so because that's certainly important that people know what they're dealing with here, because like I think you mentioned this crypto task force, and that might be as you said now really led on by Hester Pierce, and what do you think will come out of this? Because I'm wondering if this could also sort of jumpstart now the run for to find a solution for the paradox around these tokens that we had so far. You have the meme coins, and I would say if you are an issuer, it's great if you do a meme coin, because then you're sort of out of the crosshairs with the regulators, but it sort of sucks for the holders, because you can't really do anything with these tokens where you could also have like your holders benefit from it, But then the other way, if you go more for a utility coin, and where you sort of incorporate utility for holders, then you're sort of in the crosshairs with regulators, or of regulators, while it would still be more beneficial for holders. And so do you think that this new crypto task force will actually be looking at stuff like this, that at some point, or in the near future we can actually marry these two things, and that would make it a lot better in the end. If like you could sort of launch a meme coin, but it could also have some utility factors and aspects built into it, which just would make better for everyone involved.
So there was a safe harbor provision in terms of that Hester Pierce proposed a number of years ago, and that really was around the path to decentralization for a lot of these tokens. So I think hopefully you'll see that be picked up, and these things don't need to be decentralized from day one, but have some path to do that. I think folks will follow that playbook. And then in terms of cash flows, I am hopeful that the new legislature will start looking at cash flows in terms of how you can return capital to holders in a more favorable light along that decentralization path. Today, it's a very tricky path to walk, as you noted, because a lot of the times you would be considered security. But one of our themes and our thought processes for this administration is that there will be more revenue returned to token holders via these new mechanisms, which is why I think initially, as you saw Trump elected, a lot of these tokens like Aave and Maker and others actually perform very well. I think we're just in the early days of that. Now, do all of these tokens really need to return capital to investors, I think is another question. And what mechanisms do they do that through? So is it a dividend? Is it some sort of revenue sharing mechanism? TBD. Particularly when a lot of these tokens are not domiciled in the US. So like you had Trump explicitly say he wants to help incentivize US crypto innovation, particularly on Bitcoin mining and other things, or, some sort of Bitcoin strategic reserve might hold tokens that were quote unquote like US generated or US domiciled or whatever. And the tough part in crypto is like, what does that mean? Like most of these foundations that issue these tokens are non-US entities, like the majority of them are, including, I think, mentioned Solana and Ripple and others. Like they have their labs entities, which incentivize the ecosystem potentially, or some of those here in the US, but a lot of the foundations that actually issue the tokens are outside the US. How do you actually quantify that? It's a hairy question. Overall though, I think, good for revenue generating tokens, good for, folks who've been waiting to get capital a lot of these assets, but it's really unclear what sort of form factor that will take. And I think there's going to be a lot of healthy debate around that throughout, a lot of these legislative sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. Okay, makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I mean, in the end, I read this interesting article just recently by a guy at Blockworks, and he was really calling this sort of the age of the junk equity, which is upon us, saying like sort of, okay, whether you like it or not, we now have this sort of overturn window that sort of shifted, we have Trump and we could sort of now push for this when it comes to crypto as well, as you said, to sort of make all of these things happen, cash flow components, sort of maybe voting rights as well, which are sort of more established and everything. And then, yeah, this could sort of really be the dawn of this sort of junk equity age, and he sort of makes this comparison to maybe to the 1980s, I think, where you had the start of the junk bond industry, and he sort of also makes this really interesting observation that it started, or some people say it started with this predator ball, that some people from this junk bond industry were attending. And he obviously now thinks that the crypto ball that we saw happening as well just around this time is so sort of an interesting coincidence that this is maybe kicking off something similar. So yeah, I just found that a sort of interesting observation to throw in here as well.
Yeah, it's funny. The crypto ball as well was right during the time he launched this token. So any of those individuals did not profit from this, which if we're reflecting a bit more on that, folks say this is a great event for Solana. And I think it was for a lot of the reasons I mentioned earlier, but especially since it sort of tested the network through, I think $10 billion worth of volume over a number of days, 10 billion plus in each individual day. But what does that mean in terms of like, hey, did Trump king make Solana? Or were they, hey, like, let's launch on Solana because it's the best ecosystem? Like, I don't think so at all, right? His NFTs were launched elsewhere. His World Liberty Financial is primarily ETH based and has ETH as its biggest holding. he has a team who does this stuff, and I think the team just said, "Hey, guess what? All meme coins are launching on Solana. Let's go launch on Solana." Especially the mechanisms that Moonshot and Jupiter's LFG sort of framework provide. Uh, it was that was the easiest choice, and they could have launched on Base maybe or something, but yeah, I think that was the likely the calculus versus like let's king make Solana. So I think there's going to be a range of crypto activities across the board
Mm.
there for that. The ball itself, the I think it was really telling the presence of the folks who were there. So you had the new incoming Treasury Secretary there, obviously the crypto czar, a lot of really influential people in Silicon Valley. Um, and it's very popular now to be within these circles, pro crypto, pro innovation, all of these things. Um, I would say even more so really than AI, right? You've seen OpenAI announce these really sweeping initiatives, 500, I think $1 billion fund with NVIDIA and others. And there's been a lot of like pushback, like, hey, this money isn't real. Hey, this stuff's crazy. And sort of it's almost like crypto is now a bit painted more in a realistic light and a more favorable light, which is a complete swing from where we were just a few weeks and months ago. And that crypto balls is likely the start of that for sure. But the junk bond era is an apt term for it. And I think, we have this preconceived notion that traditional financial markets are not um, predatory or don't have as much speculation in them as crypto does. But hey, guess what? I would consider these 3x levered ETFs on some speculative products even more predatory than meme coins are, because folks don't understand exactly the mechanisms behind them and how they work. With meme coins, it's pretty eyes wide open. Same thing with SPACs. I mean, the SPAC craze you went through, like all this stuff, is in financial markets in different forms. With meme coins, there's an explicit honesty that I think is a bit more refreshing, despite the fact that optically it may not be fantastic for those who are looking at the industry from the outside.
Mm. No, for sure. That's some great points here as well, especially the one with, pointing out that like traditional markets might just be as predatory. I would agree, even though maybe slightly pushback because I think you said it yourself. I mean, crypto is sort of the uh, pure manifestation of capital, even pure, I would say, just because also it's happening on these rails who sometimes are sort of hard to kind of control, and then obviously everyone just gets to, because it seems to be a little more permissionless still, everyone gets to launch just what he wants. And that's why, as you said yourself, it's pure capitalism. It's also probably more honest in that sense. But then it's just going to be interesting. I think it's just a sort of a natural development in financial markets that we have been seeing, with the entire financialization of the world that's been really developing ever since, since we maybe left the gold standard or stuff like this. So I just think it's a natural development that nobody can sort of stop, But I mean, and then to your other point, pointing out whether I mean, a lot of people have been reading stuff into what's been happening. Some people have been saying, yeah, look, he's vouching for Solana by launching on Solana. But just as you said, it's probably just because all the meme coins are happening there. And then other people were like, well, he's just like milking Solana. He's using Solana and now he's trying to get liquidity out, and now he's buying Aave and ENA and Link and WBTC. So it's probably better for Ethereum. And others were saying, no, look, he's going to buy Bitcoin in the end. And so I think a lot of people have just been sort of speculating and maybe reading too much into what's been happening here. That's sort of my belief, I would say. But I mean, you mentioned World Liberty Financial as well, and I think there's some controversy there going on too. With the WBTC that they have been buying. Again, any thoughts on this, or have they just been buying because World Liberty happens to be on Ethereum and that's why they buy WBTC and not the native real BTC, so to say?
These these entities, I think it's really important to note, are managed by other people than Trump. He has plenty. He has other things to care about. He wants to make money, but he's not going to be in the trenches deciding whether to buy Link or Solana. He has a team that manages this. this entity is very Ethereum native, which I think is positive for the ecosystem. You saw them buy the other day, as you mentioned, I think 47 million BTC, 47 million Ethereum, and, different 47 or 4.7 for his 47th presidency denominations of a number of assets. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of support for the Ethereum ecosystem via that entity. And that's primarily because that's where the majority of the institutionalized financial capital is today. That's the majority of the stablecoin volumes there are today. And that is where you can make a lot of money doing a lot of borrowing and lending operations, which is what that entity was set up for. So I think it's only going to continue. If he does do other activity, I'm sure it will be in terms of token launches on Solana. But the nexus of the activity will be on Ethereum. And, just yesterday, there was this, new body launched by I think it was funded by Vitalik and a few others to incentivize and grow the Ethereum ecosystem for institutional investors. Not a second foundation like folks were talking about, but sort of a body that helps onboard more institutions to Ethereum. So, I'm sure World Liberty Financial will be a big part of that, investing in that. And that's really where a lot of their direction of capital has been to date.
Mm. And where you think does Justin Sun come in all of this? Because as I said, WBTC is involved, and he's he's put out a post as well, exactly on this. How to make Ethereum great again, and finally put it on its road to 10K, so to say. So how is he involved? Because I feel like I could just imagine that he's pulling the strings somewhere as well. Because just when I was in Abu Dhabi, the event put on by David Bailey, which was sort of this nation-state sovereign Bitcoin adoption event, organized by Bailey and the Bitcoin Magazine guys. In the end, the dinner, I think at the 7-star hotel, it was fully financed by Justin Sun. By WBTC was like the main sponsor, and so I think it's sort of the impression, I can't shed the impression that he's sort of having his hands in here as well.
I didn't know I thought we stopped at 5 stars, but I guess 7 is where it's like when you turn the volume up to 11. And
Yeah, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, everything is just bigger, and I think supposedly it's actually a 5-star hotel, but they just still call it a 7-star. So everything is just ginormous over there.
yeah. In terms of his impact directly, he's obviously very interested in the Tron ecosystem. Doing the majority of their activity in stablecoin volume. So a lot of great innovations for financial rails outside the US. If we talk about his plan more specifically, so his proposals were to halt ETH sales immediately and optimize revenue. I think we can all agree with. They can easily make the same revenue through staking or other DeFi activities. No idea why they haven't been doing that before. Heavily tax layer 2 solutions immediately, so Ethereum is profitable and earning 5 billion plus annually. Personally think that's probably too heavy-handed because that will make fees go up on L2s, which is sort of the opposite of what we want. So not sure I agree with that one. Streamline EF operations. Okay, we can probably all agree with that one. Adjust rewards and increase fee burns. Probably generally most folks agree on that one as well. So he's put forth a general set of tenets that I think most people kind of agree with. The broader problem, I think, is the folks who would be making these decisions at the EF have no care for price at all, which there's a very core principle of decentralized innovation, censorship resistance that's at the core of Ethereum, World War III resistant, etc. But also at the core of that is price. That, real diehard crypto folks, like to talk about price, but think they're above prices going up. And price actually means more economic security. So that is something the Ethereum Foundation has never cared about, is price, even less so than the Bitcoin crowd. So there has to be this mindset shift within the EF that price is an important input, and we should try to support price in whatever way we can because it enhances economic security, and because it makes token holders happy, and because it evangelizes and sort of reinforces our mission as an organization. Hell, I don't know if they're going to pick any of these up, but fingers crossed. We'll see. I think they're decent.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's interesting that we see that things are sort of heating up here as well with Ethereum. And I mean, if you are probably a true Bitcoiner, then you're pointing out that yeah, this is what you have been signing up ever since you were going to Ethereum, and like they would say, it sort of obviously skeptically and just also now pointing out that yeah, now Vitalik trying to be more sort of like a benevolent dictator, but trying to make his way, and that's, yeah, you can say this is good or bad. But I think what's interesting here, just from a more objective point of view, is that, yeah, it's great that these discussions are going on. And I think some other people have been pointing out that this could sort of be like compared to Bitcoin had its block size war, back in 2016, and maybe Ethereum is now having its sort of foundation war, and we'll see whoever emerges as the winning party is going to dictate what's going to be happening to the entire ecosystem. But I think, yeah, hopefully this is going to be net beneficial as well for Ethereum. So certainly interesting. I mean, maybe I don't know if you have anything to add here. Otherwise, I would want to throw in another name. Anything to add on that front?
On which, sorry.
Sorry, on Ethereum, like and I think
Oh,
what's going to happen, or
no more thought there. We'll see. We just need preference. We'll see.
yeah, that's great. No, just because, so obviously we're being speculative here, and I don't really like this, but it's just because there's so much going on. I want to throw in another name, like Brad Garlinghouse, XRP, obviously. I mean, XRP has sort of has surprised a lot of people, in the crypto sphere, and I mean, it's really the poster boy in a negative sense, but yeah, it's been just doing well lately. And so my question would be, what do you think will XRP play in all of this? And is it maybe Brad, who's the biggest voice in Trump's ear, and nobody knows that, or sort of just wouldn't want for it to be true?
Yeah, who's in Trump's ear is immensely important to who will be considered part of the direction of the legislative agenda he helped set, along with the potential purchases of these U.S. assets that, we don't know whether they're U.S. assets because they're domiciled all over the world. Whether it be XRP or others, I think a lot of the legacy coins are assets that folks should be looking at, and they're going to be very hated. So XRP's rally has been hated by crypto Twitter. Now, I think you could see a very similar thing happen with Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, others. Whether we like it or not, these things actually have still an enormous amount of volume traded on them for a lot of market makers and others. And they are included as a market cap weighting in like the biggest indices, whether it be, I'm not sure if all of them are in the Coinbase 50, but at least part of them are. Like I think XRP has a bigger weighting than Solana, if I remember correctly. The Bitwise 10, like all of these other blended indices, as more ETFs are approved and assets are approved, will include these assets. So there will be latent demand and buying pressure for these things. I think we're going to see a lot more hated rallies. And, XRP may be at the front of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, wasn't it just a few days ago when we saw that CME was sort of announcing that they're going to have like futures for XRP and I think Solana as well, right? And that's sort of by some people taken as an indication that we could be seeing these assets getting ETFs further down the road, right?
Yep, exactly. I think, yeah, we saw yesterday. Yeah, Solana and I think XRP had, potential CME futures contracts, and then, that was taken down off their website, but it's apparently on the roadmap for the CME. So it could be, very soon. I don't think you're going to have, and folks have said, you need the prerequisite of CME futures now before you launch these ETFs. I don't think that's the case anymore, personally, just my speculation, but that was a sample size of one. You essentially had the Bitcoin ETF that had that. So folks are copy pasting that over, and, you had Ethereum, same thing, but I don't think it's going to be necessary for every asset, particularly when a lot of these things are already not deemed securities by the previous administration, whether they'll be relooked at as not securities for this new administration, I think is going to come in time. Solana, for example, was deemed a security by previous administration, still on a path for an ETF. So there may need to be some changes there, along with a number of others that were deemed securities along the way. But there, I think Bloomberg put up, James Safer put up a post the other day that had, 20 plus ETFs from everything from Polkadot to Dogecoin to Solana to whatever, to a range of ETFs. So I think we're going to see a lot of this stuff. Actually, as an industry, we should hope that a lot of these things are not approved, because if they are approved, that just sucks more capital out from assets, quote unquote, legitimate assets that we want to invest in. Like, do we need an H bar ETF? I don't think so. Like, do we need, a lot of these other altcoin ETFs? I don't think so, personally. So I hope a lot of them don't get approved, actually.
Well, I mean, that's a valid point, but I mean, that's something that when I talk to Bitcoiners, what they're telling me, and obviously they're only vouching for Bitcoin, but they're bringing forth exactly this argument, that they're saying, okay, who's going to decide which of these assets, after all, is going to be valid and worthy of an ETF, So, I mean, the Bitcoiners would say it's only Bitcoin. Then you have like maybe some other people who say, well, the Solana boys and the Ether fanboys would say, well, yeah, no, Ether should get one as well. And probably obviously has one already. But then the XRP army is vouching for their asset, So this is something I'm also grappling myself with, because it's sort of true. Like, where do you kind of stop, and further down the road, it's sort of you get the impression that whoever is now at the lever, and as I said, in Trump's ear, can sort of make sure that his project is sort of included as well, and then you can either like that or not, but it's just going to happen. As an investor, you will sort of have to make sure you know who's driving and is on the steering wheel here. But yeah, it's something I'm not sure myself how to judge this, like morally as well. What's happening here.
Moral judgments in financial markets are, I think, not extremely relevant up to a point of when what you're buying is, illegal or criminal or whatever. Like, yeah, of course, moral judgments there. But for moral judgments on assets that are freely traded and you're able to profit from, I think are distracting from your end mission as an allocator, individual investor, with your end goal being the maximum amount of profit that you can potentially make for the time you've allocated to evaluating an asset. The tricky part is the genie's out of the bottle for this stuff. So the only panacea, I don't know, whatever, how to say that, but is regulation, which is like the exact opposite ethos of what Bitcoiners want. So like, I think there's a lot of looking in the mirror, like, do we want more legislation that reins this stuff in, or do we want the permissionless financial system that we were asking for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, that's totally something. Sorry, I didn't get that.
I think there's some happy medium to having some level of favorable legislation that eliminates some of this nonsense.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, that's certainly something. And obviously that's sometimes like a sort of a contradiction. And if you talk like to true wholehearted Bitcoiners, they're sort of, yeah, now vouching for regulation to stop a lot of this other stuff. But then again, they're saying just because, yeah, there is a lot of bullshit floating around, and that's why you have to also put in place the necessary regulation. But still, yeah, I mean, for me, it's sort of, I have like these two sort of souls in my breast, because I do understand the Bitcoiners and their argument, and maybe the more skeptical people, but then also at the other end of the spectrum, I'm totally with you. The genie's out of the bottle, and we can't stop this. And now you just sort of have to try to navigate this, and see how this is going to unfold. So, yeah, just very interesting. Maybe the last thing I want to talk to you about is really, you mentioned him as well, Ross Ulbricht. And he's been pardoned, and he's now a free man again, and sort of maybe the consequences from this would be interesting. And just one thought I want to throw in here is like, yeah, it's actually very fascinating. As somebody who's usually quite skeptical of politicians and of going to vote, and sort of, yeah, you're not making any difference and stuff. Your vote doesn't make any difference. Politics is all just a made up game, and you can't change it. This sort of shows to me now that, yeah, you can make a difference in a life of an actual personal, or of an actual person, because like it was sort of the crypto slash Bitcoin community who made this happen. If it hasn't been for them, if it weren't for them, Ross would still be behind bars, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think this is a clear vindication of a message and political ask. Um, I find myself a bit lost on this one, to be completely honest. I'm not sure why we're coalescing, or the industry's coalesced so much around Ross Ulbricht. Like, it seems to me it was a very unfair sentence and he served his time, but certainly wasn't like he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, there are some pretty serious allegations of assassination attempts and, facilitating a pretty bad marketplace for some activities. While it's very much in the libertarian ethos, I'm not sure why the industry's coalesced so much around him. But he served a lot of time. Good for him. He's out. I'm happy we can move on personally in terms of like more substantial issues.
Yeah, no, I see. I see your point. I feel like it was just like, obviously it was a good point, or sort of, a thing to coalesce around, for people to sort of think this is a common goal that we have, and now we want to push this, and there's a person involved, and that's why it's always sort of probably going well with a lot of people in there, and seems like a worthy goal. And I mean, it's just interesting that we see, like, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, something like this would have never been possible, because you also need a positive political stance on crypto and Bitcoin for something like this to happen, and just within a few years, like, we managed as a community to sort of change course, and now somebody like Ross can be freed, but I'm sure you're right. A lot of people haven't really looked into what he's actually done, what the sentences have been, and how much it was sort of justified. It was more just a personal sort of emotional issue, I think, that was going well with a lot of people, and that's why the support seems to be so big. And maybe a lot of people are also thinking that if Trump is going through with this, and is actually following through with this promise, that he will be keeping a lot of other promises, and that's why maybe some people, or that's why so many people were so vocal about it on X, just to show the support, because they were secretly also vouching for their own bags again, not quite sure. But interesting.
I think,
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, I think that is the most salient point. Is this is a promise he made to the industry. It's a promise he kept, and I think that's really important for future potential, actions we're going to see in these next few weeks, months, and days. Hopefully, strategic Bitcoin reserve being at the center of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I hope there's going to be more coming our way. I mean, maybe my last question in terms of crypto would be, like, a lot of people are talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and hoping for this to happen. But there's also been some talks, or some talk that the repeal of the SAB 121 would be just as powerful in terms of what's going to happen to Bitcoin and crypto, because, like, banks could finally move into the space unhinged, and sort of my question would be, do you share this opinion that it is even more powerful and maybe also more likely to happen in the foreseeable future?
The ability, and we just had Morgan Stanley talk about this today, in terms of working directly with regulators to enable payments as well as holdings of Bitcoin for their customers, would be immensely powerful, because right now at the biggest banks in the US, so JP Morgan, Merrill, all of the others, they cannot hold Bitcoin for customers. If they do, they have to hold it, directly against other assets, which is not tenable, particularly in custody. The biggest custody banks have trouble holding it now. So this will unlock all of the financialization that we've been waiting for and have had drips and drabs of over the past months and years. I think it's enormous. I think it'll be something that hopefully comes in, the next few weeks and months, and something that could be ordered pretty quickly, as there was a lot of bipartisan support for repealing SAB 121. So I think that's potentially close to as impactful as the SBR, not as impactful as the SBR. I think the SBR sets off a cascade of front-running purchases of Bitcoins by a large number of nation states, even if it's just holding the direct Bitcoin that we have. My call is that we're actually going to be purchasing Bitcoin sometime in 2025. I know others disagree with that, like Nick Carter you had in this program. And I think there are a number of ways Trump could do that without direct congressional legislative action. But you have the people in power who want it. Senator Lummis is getting voted in as the Digital Assets Subcommittee chair this morning. And she's calling for, I think, $5 billion worth of Bitcoin being purchased over the next 5 years. So I think all the tools are there on the legislative side, the executive action side. Trump could take action there to purchase it. And I think the cascade of an actual SBR would send Bitcoin to price levels that it's really hard to quantify. So I do think, and there's precedent through a number of other, strategic reserves we have in the U.S., obviously gold, obviously oil, other commodities we hold in varying quantities. I don't see why Bitcoin couldn't be one of those, especially when Trump has said so much in a number of press releases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on that point, it's actually true. I mean, if you think about how many people are sort of really bullish now on Bitcoin, and they're really high up the food chain in the financial system, I think because like mind, in terms of their mind, they have already capitulated and are all in. If you think of Larry Fink, who's I think there was also a video floating around a couple of days ago where he was really calling for maybe a 700K price target for Bitcoin, just because he was comparing it to gold. You had, I think, the CEO of Bank of America saying, well, once regulation allows for it, we're going to move in, You had like Sergio Ermotti, which is like, because I'm from Switzerland, he's the CEO of UBS, He used to be quite critical as well, but at the World Economic Forum, he was just sort of now also positive and actually agreeing that Bitcoin is more than just pure speculation. So you feel like there's really this, as we said, this overturn window has shifted, and many people are now just really positive in terms of Bitcoin and crypto, and you feel like, as you said, once somebody is going to kick it off, and if it were the US, with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or then again with the regulation repeal of this SAB 121, I think that's just gonna kick off this cascade in real time, and then things could get quite hectic out there. So definitely interesting times to be around and beyond in the markets.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, I think
nice.
it's a fun time to be out there, and
Yeah, great, cool. So I think we're up. It's been 50 minutes. I think everything we have discussed, and Tom, thanks a lot for coming on. Maybe if you just want to share where people can find you, and maybe also one question we ask to everyone on the show: if you know of any high signal guest that just comes to mind that we should bring on this show as well, just drop the name here, and we would be happy to bring them on as well.
awesome. Yeah, we'll certainly do that. You could find me on X, platform formerly known as Twitter, at Dunleavy, my last name 89, and all of our research work, my musings, thoughts, and shit posts, all there.
Nice, great. Okay, have a great one. Thank you, Tom. See you around.
Thank you.